back, everyone. It's a pleasure to have you back here. Did everybody enjoy Fiji? Yeah, little liquid sunshine. I remember the cruise director talking about the boat rocking a little bit more after we took off from Fiji, but actually hasn't been too bad. I'll tell you a quick story. This is actually my first time on a cruise ever. I've never stepped on a cruise. I've actually toured the galleys. Well, thank you. I have actually toured the galleys of some of the ships that dock in Orlando or in Cape Canaveral. And done some training with the staff there in the ship, but I've never sailed, and so I was a little hesitant, right? I wasn't sure what the rocking was going to be like, and so I brought a couple patches, and I remember from that first night when we went from Hawaii to the second island, I was like, okay, this is not good. I need to put a patch on. And so I had it on for a couple of days, and I remember the day we woke up in Pango Pango, and I had heard about the side effects, but I woke up that morning and I couldn't see. I was like, oh my God, why is this so blurry? I didn't drink that much last night. Like, what's going on? So I'm like, you know what? I'm going to take it off. I'm going to go out on the island, and I'm just going to acclimate. And so I went back on the ship, and it's been great. I haven't had any issues. But it was a lot of fun trying to gather the ingredients and measure everything and trying to read the scale. It was just like, it's a good thing that you guys don't taste this one, because those first couple of days, it might be what have been a good. But anyways, so back to cooking. Today we're going to do a really cool recipe. It is on the menu in Tiffin's. It has been in the menu for about, I would say, 6 months. It's a dish that we've done slight variations to, mainly on the chutney that's going to garnish this dish. But it's really a wonderful dish that highlights South African flavors. And so I would say it's pretty much comfort food, but it does have a little bit of that South African influence. And it's really cool how it kind of blends the South and South Africa and that African influence that you see in the South. And so we're going to do a shrimp and grits, okay? All right. And so the difference here is mainly the spice that we're going to be using for the shrimp, and then the grits, really, in South Africa called mealie-pap. And really the difference there with the mealie-pap is that it's a little bit finer. It's a little bit finer ground corn, as opposed to maybe the more coarse grits that you would find in the South. And so in this case, what we're doing with this mealie-pap is we're favoring it, instead of adding cheddar cheese or other cheeses that are normally found with grits, we're adding a little bit of goat cheese. And so the goat cheese really has that nice tanginess. It balances out with the richness of the shrimp, and I think you're gonna enjoy it. So the first thing is we're gonna start with the chutney. And so this chutney is going to be made with two components. It's gonna have some green apples, some green Granny Smith apples, and then it's gonna have some unripe tomatoes. So in this case, I prefer using green tomatoes. It is day 10 on the ship, maybe, I think. So, okay, thank you, 11. So I had the steward downstairs order green tomatoes, but it's day 11, so now they're a little bit red. But that's okay, they're still unripe. They're still nice and hard and firm, and that's what we're looking for. It's important that they are unripe so that as you're cooking it, they don't just completely disintegrate. You want to still be able to pick those out as the chutney cooks down. Okay? All right. And so for this chutney is going to cook for, depending on the volume that you're making, it's going to cook for about, I would say maybe 45 minutes to an hour and 15 minutes. And so because it's going to cook that long, this is really going to kind of break down. So the precision of how you cut the tomatoes or the green apples is not really that important. But I want to make sure that there's still a little bit of finesse, and those pieces that you will be able to pick out are nicely presented on top of the shrimp. So I'm gonna do this with a little bit of care. All right. So first, I like just coring my tomatoes, and I find that the easiest way of just getting a more precise cut is by first just getting even slices on my tomatoes. Like so. Can you all see there? Yes, okay, perfect. And then I just want to cut this down into some strips. It's a lot easier to do this with a green tomato. Doing this with a ripe tomato is a little messier. I'm just going to cut those into nice dice. You can use any type of apple, really. In this case, what I'm looking for, and the reason I'm using the green apple, is I want that tartness from the green apple. This preparation does have a little bit of white balsamic vinegar that's going to add some tartness. But I just find that the texture of the green apple, that really crisp texture, and then that sweetness and the acid that it has, it really works well for the preparation. This chutney can be seasonal, so if you find that apples maybe are not in season, not that you can't get apples all year round, but let's say you want to use a different component, really, you can switch. You can use tomatillos. Tomatillos work really great for this preparation. Or if you just simply enjoy maybe quince, it's wonderful if you enjoy other types of orchard fruit. So I think the important thing is balancing out the acid and the amount of sugar to make sure that you have that sweet and sour flavor on this chutney. Okay, and now we're going to move into our apples. This would have been a lot more difficult if I still couldn't see. All right. So with the green apple, same idea. I basically take this part off. I'm definitely going to use this, but this is just going to give me a stable surface now to turn my apple around and get those even slices. I'm going to follow the same pattern. It's a little bit easier with the apple just because you can stack those pieces together. It's a little more efficient. I do sometimes. In this case, because the cooking time is going to be extensive, that skin is going to break down. But if you enjoy it peeled, absolutely you can peel the apple. I also kind of like having a little bit of that different tone within the chutney. So in this case, I'm going to choose to leave it on. All right, here we go. And now we're going to go to the pot. What we're going to add to this combination is, first, I want to make sure as I'm cutting my apples, let's say you're doing this in bigger volume, I want to go ahead and add the vinegar to my pot right away. Anybody guess why? To keep the apples from turning, absolutely. You can use a little bit of lime juice or lemon juice, but in this case, since the preparation has a little bit of that white balsamic vinegar, I'm just going to go ahead and add that to it. It's really just the color. You still have sweetness, you still have elevated acid in both balsamics, but in this case, it doesn't have that color. So I don't want this to turn brown, or I want to preserve the color of the two fruits. So I chose the white balsamic. Slightly different flavor. It does. I think the regular balsamic is a little bit oxidative. Maybe it's a way to describe it. But in this case, I feel the flavor is a little cleaner, and I just enjoy it for this particular preparation. Okay, so to this, I'm going to go ahead and add some sugar. I'm going to go ahead and add some chopped garlic and ginger. Those are going to be my two aromatics in here. Even though this is going to be a sweet and sour preparation, salt is not necessarily a seasoning. Salt, what it does is it enhances flavors, right? I want to make sure that it kind of enhances those flavors. So I'm going to just do a pinch. I don't want this to be salty. I just want it to elevate those flavors. And then the most important thing, anytime I'm doing something that's sweet, I like pairing it with acidity, of course, but also with spice. And so in this case, I'm going to do a little bit of chili flake. You guys like spicy food? All right, we're going to do a little bit more. Okay. And that's pretty much it. We're just going to take this and let it cook down. Like I said, depending on the volume, it's going to take about 45 minutes to an hour and 15 minutes. Every once in a while, coming in and just mix it so that all the ingredients are cooking down evenly. And if you find that maybe your components are kind of floating above the liquid, you can always add a little bit more liquid. That's okay. One of the things that's important when making this chutney is we are cooking with sugar. As sugar cools down, what happens? It hardens, right? So if I were to cook this chutney down to the point where I wanted it, let's say it's still very hot, right? And I've reached the texture that I want on the plate. By the time it reaches the table, that chutney is going to be very tight. And I don't necessarily want that. I want that chutney to have similar texture to maybe a marmalade, let's say. Where it's spreadable, it's easy to consume within the dish, and it just kind of spreads around. So I want to guard that. I don't want to take it down too far. If for some reason, let's say, you get distracted and you come back to it and it's a little bit too tight, you can always add a little bit of water, whisk it in, dissolve that water, and it'll come right back. Okay? All right, so now we're going to turn to our mealy pop. And what I have in this pot is I'm preheating some heavy cream, some vegetable stock, and I have a little bit of salt in there. Can anybody tell me what goes into a vegetable stock? How do you make a vegetable stock? What are some of the vegetables that you would put in there? Tomato, yes, you could. Carrots, celery, and onions, the most important. Mirepoix, if you're familiar with that term, right? Kind of the building blocks of making any stock. So in this case, you can certainly put any trimmings of other vegetables that you might have in your fridge. Fennel is fantastic in there. If you have some stems from the parsley that you weren't, going to use, please don't put the cilantro stems. We definitely want to use those, right? But you can add any herbs in there, a little bit of bay leaf, some black peppercorn, and cook it for about 45 minutes. We don't want to cook a vegetable stock too long. It just kind of loses the freshness. It doesn't taste very good. So that's one of the stocks that you just want to cook for a short period of time. All right. So in this case, what I'm looking for is I'm looking to bring this combination of the cream and the stock slowly to a boil. If I were to rush this, I can scorch my pan in the bottom. I don't want that. And what I'm looking for is once it reaches a boil, what I have here is I have my mealy pop or my fine cornmeal. Okay? When I'm going to add the cornmeal to the pan, something that's crucial, I've made this mistake before. You want to make sure that you immediately start whisking. If I were to add it and just kind of walk away, I'm going to have just a block. I'm going to have an arepa inside of my pan, if you're familiar with that. We don't want that. We want to whisk it in, keep that creaminess, keep it loose, and really you're going to end up with a much more velvety preparation. Okay? So now that it is boiling, I'm going to start adding and whisking. And once you start your mealy pop, you're committed. You're going to have to stay there, and you're going to have to keep whisking, prevent it from clumping, prevent it from burning in the bottom, especially as this mealy pop gets close to being done. It's going to be very thick, and it's going to burn. You walk a minute, and you're going to come back to smoky grits. So, okay, so now I have that in there, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to add, first of all, I'm going to add my salt. And the reason for that is anytime you are cooking, whether it's rice or grits or really any grain, you want to add the salt at the beginning. And the reason for that is your grain is going to absorb whatever liquid is in, right? And if that liquid is not seasoned, it's just going to taste like not much, right? You can certainly season at the end, and yes, the liquid that's kind of surrounding that grain now is going to have the salt, but the center is not going to be properly seasoned. So it's important that as we allow the grain to hydrate on that first hydration, that it hydrates in a liquid that is already seasoned all the way through. So I'm going to go ahead and add that on there. You can always add more at the end, but I just want to make sure that at least it has some flavor as we're building layers of flavor in this preparation. Okay. This polenta or the mealy pop, when prepared properly, it's going to take some time. So through the magic of Disney, I have some polenta that I already cook in the back. But I do want to talk about one more component that goes in there, and that is the goat cheese. I like adding the goat cheese as I reach the texture I want in the polenta. Okay, so once I have taste that polenta and it is good to go, I add the goat cheese, I whisk it in, I melt it, and that's just gonna add that tanginess, the richness. It's gonna thicken your polenta a little bit. If you're gonna be serving your polenta and it gets too thick, add a little bit of vegetable stock. If it's still too loose, leave it a few more minutes on the stovetop, and it'll thicken up for you. So no worries. And one more component that I have in there, maybe you picked it out as you were enjoying the dish, is I have some roasted corn. The corn is a nice texture pop in the polenta or in the mealy pop. It also has a little bit of that smokiness and a little bit of sweetness. I just really enjoy folding that corn in right at the end. Okay, and as I move my attention to the shrimp, I'm going to invite my friend Jan to tell you about the pairing that we have today for this dish. Mr. Jan, can you please come in and tell us about this wine? All right, I'm going to move this back. There he is, Mr. Jan. All right, well, Mr. Jan shows up. We're going to talk about what I have done here with this polenta. This is a good trick. I do this with any time I'm cooking something that's starchy. Whether it's, let's say I have a pan of risotto, I have mashed potatoes, I have polenta. If I have something that's starchy and I'm going to be serving it in, let's say, 15 minutes, half an hour, I don't leave it open. It creates a film, right? You have that skin layer that forms in anything that's starchy. Once you whisk that back in, that skin doesn't really separate. It just kind of folds back in, and you might have those lumps, and it's just not very pleasant. So what I like to do is I like to take a little bit of plastic wrap, and I don't cover it. I put it directly on top of the mixture, like so. Okay, and that really protects that layer. It works really great with sauces such as bechamel or anything that has a little bit of starch. Okay, Mr. Jan, tell us about the wine.
Thank you, Chef. Good morning, everyone. How are you all doing? Please raise your hand if you like wine. Thank you. Welcome home. All right, to those of you who haven't met me yet, my name is Jan. I'm from Cape Town, South Africa. Chef, thank you for taking me home. I love it. I work in Animators Restaurant, first of all, so if you have any wine questions, you need recommendations, something special to celebrate the vacation in life, please ask the server to call me out of my pantry. I'll be more than happy to take good care of you. Alright, to those of you who still have some wine left, please go ahead and give the wine a swirl and a sniff. Alright, so I brought us a lovely bottle all the way from Argentina. It's called the Zolo Torrontés. Torrontés is a very common white grape variety that you find in Argentina. In fact, they're the biggest producer of this grape. So you can go ahead and take a sip as well, but keep some wine to actually enjoy with the Peri-Peri dish. Lovely. First of all, it's a floral and aromatic grape. You get some tropical notes coming through as well. White peachiness as well, including some lime zest too. Okay, so who of you joined my class last time? Okay, I see a few hands. True story. All right, so last time we had a spicy dish as well, and so what I did, I auto went for a Riesling which was off dry. So it had a little bit of sugar in the aftertaste of the wine as you swallow the wine. This one is dry, but the acidity isn't too high. It's not as dry as a Sauvignon Blanc or a Pinot Grigio. It's also very important, as I mentioned, super fruity driven. So when your palate tastes this fruity driven white wine, it might appear to the palate to be more sweeter, which is why it can go with this Peri-Peri dish chef is preparing for us as well. I do want to recommend for you when you're at home or when you throw your Christmas party and your Thanksgiving parties as well, and you invite all your neighbors and your friends and your families, never be shy to try and try different things when it comes to food and wine pairing. It can't go that bad. So really, that's why I wanted you to try something different with a more spicier, livelier dish as well. Are you enjoying the wine? Fantastic. Great way to start the day, right? Okay. This wine, by the way, is available in the restaurant by the glass and by the bottle. We also have this in the classic wine package if you purchase the wine classic package. Any questions from your side? Yes. 2022. 2022, yeah. Most of your white wines are going to be younger, 2 to 3 years old. Any other questions? Yes. So first of all, this is as I described, a floral and aromatic grape. So that can definitely relate to, almost want to say part of the family group of your Rieslings and Moscatos, as you rightly said. This is a super common grape. I agree with you. When I tried it the first time, I was actually in Napa in the US, but the Torrontes I tried was from Argentina as well. And rightly, as you said, the first thing that came to mind is this stands out quite a bit compared to what I used to. For instance, in South Africa, we have lots of Sauvignon Blanc, Chardonnay, and Chenin Blanc on the white side. So I hope that answers your question. There is quite a bit going on. Again, I hope you enjoy it as much as I do. All right, guys. Thank you so much. I'll see you in animators. I'll leave the bottle on the counter here if you want to come afterwards and take a picture. Chef, thanks a lot.
Okay, and now we're going to go back to the shrimp. So what I have here is, this is some peeled, deveined tail on shrimp. And what I like to do with the shrimp is I want to make sure that I get nice caramelization on the shrimp. So I like to take a couple of paper towels, and as it either thaws out or after I prep my shrimp, I want to kind of lay it on that paper towel. I want to make sure I get it nice and dry before I season it. That's going to allow it to really sear nicely, as opposed to kind of steam when I add it in my pan. Okay, so this is nice and dry. Here I have salt first, right? I'm going to add that first. If I was preparing a lot of quantity of shrimp, I don't just want to have my shrimp in a bowl. So if I add the salt, the layer in the top is going to have the salt. The layer in the bottom is not going to have the same amount, and it's just hard to gauge really how much salt you're adding to the shrimp. So I like to kind of layer it out in one layer, single layer, season it, and then if I'm going to mix it with something that I really want it to kind of just be tossed in, I go back to the bowl, and at that point I add the second seasoning. Okay, so here I have what is called Peri-Peri. Peri-Peri is a combination of multiple spices, and there's different variations really, but in this case I'm mainly focusing on the flavor of the paprika and the spice of the cayenne, the aromatic intensity from the oregano, the dried oregano. So I'm going to go ahead and just add this to my shrimp, and I want to be generous with it. And one of my favorite things to do when adding seasoning to shrimp is I add my dry seasoning, and I also add a little bit of oil. So in this case, I'm using some canola oil. It almost becomes a little bit of a paste, right? So I want that on there. I want it to be completely coated evenly. And the oil is going to now allow me to not have to put any additional oil in my pan. My shrimp is going to be nicely coated. It's going to have the right amount so that I achieve the right caramelization that I need. Just a little bit. There we go. When cooking shrimp, I don't want to add my shrimp to the pan and start tossing it. If I toss it, it steams. I want to kind of leave it on there, allow it to caramelize, and then I'm going to flip it over. And once I have the color I want, if I need to toss it as it continues to cook, depending on the size of your shrimp, that's okay. But I want to really kind of allow it to caramelize first before I kind of mess with it. In this case, we have paprika in this mixture. I don't want to burn that paprika, so I'm just going to kind of take a peek without disturbing it too much. Make sure I'm not burning that. It also has cayenne, so maybe that's why some of you are coughing right now. There we go. A couple of days ago, as we were cooking a different protein, we talked about carryover cooking, right? It's the same idea with the shrimp. So when cooking shrimp, I don't want to cook this shrimp to the point where it's perfect in the pan. Because what's going to happen is I'm going to gather the rest of my sides that I'm going to be serving that dish with, or maybe my family is not at the table right away. And so I want to pull it away a little bit, maybe 75% of the way. My pan's still going to be hot. The shrimp's still going to be hot. I want this shrimp to be perfect. By the time it kind of cools down, I want it still to be juicy. I don't want it to be dry. Nothing worse than rubbery shrimp, right? So I'm going to just kind of watch it, and I'm going to take it off at about 75%, which we're pretty much there. So I'm going to move this to the side, take it off the heat, and now I'm going to get ready to plate. So you can maybe see here the color of my tomatoes and my apples are starting to change. Some of these have not been in the liquid, so you can see they're kind of still completely white. And these have become translucent. We want to make sure that we're mixing and cooking this evenly. But the idea is for this to break down. And you're going to have something after about an hour and 15 minutes. You're going to have something that looks more like that. Okay? So it has just the right texture. It has that deep red color from the tomato. It should have been green, but red is okay. Still gonna work. And then now what we're gonna do is we're gonna go to the plate. You can serve it either right away, or you can allow it to kind of come to room temperature. It depends on the dish, really. Was that the question? Okay. No, it's cooking over low heat, simmering low. We don't want it boiling super rapidly. We want it to kind of simmer slowly, protect that sugar from burning, and allowing the food to break down. So just a low simmer. Okay, so now I have my finished polenta here. I'm going to start with that. And I'm going to allow my polenta to kind of disperse from the center of the plate to kind of protect the height. There we go. Is that better? That's perfect. Okay, here we go. I don't want to add too much. It's just going to spread, throughout the entire plate. I still want to kind of have a little bit of the rim exposed. I'm thinking about the way I'm building it. And as you can see, I'm adding it in the center, and it's just kind of spreading out on its own. I'm going to come in with my shrimp. And in this preparation, what I like to do is I love displaying that beautiful tail. We chose to have that tail on specifically because we want to have that height. So I'm going to be placing the shrimp around the mealy pop with the tail standing up. I want to have all the shrimp evenly spaced out. That way it has, you know, just the right look. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to have my chutney, and I'm going to come in right in between, right in the center. I'm not only plating just for the way that it looks, I'm also thinking about the way this is going to be consumed, the way it eats. I want it to kind of make sense. So if you think about it, this shrimp it's not quite small enough to just take in one bite. You're going to have to come in and cut it. So naturally that grit or that mealy pop is going to spread out. That chutney is going to spread out as well. I want it to have a little bit of that sweetness and the acid from that in every bite. So I think the best place to place that is going to be in the center so that it distributes out evenly. So here we go. I saved a little bit of my goat cheese. And I'm going to come in with the goat cheese and spread it around. Just a few pieces. This is just crumbled goat cheese. If you time this right and your polenta is nice and hot, the goat cheese is be slightly melted by the time it reaches the table. You can use really any cheese you like. You like Parmesan, if you like maybe cheddar. Feta would be awesome. Yes, feta also has a little bit of tanginess. It's still a great melting cheese, so I think it's going to behave very similar to the goat cheese. What I have here is I kind of went through a bag of arugula, just regular, you know, salad mix. And what I did is I kind of cherry picked the right size leaves. I wanted to kind of use that as garnish. It doesn't have to be arugula. It could be really any salad mix you have, or maybe if you're one of those that enjoys growing herbs on your windowsill, pick a couple of young tender herbs, and I'm just gonna add those to kind of make the dish pop just a little bit. And I'm gonna use the shrimp. I'm gonna grab it from the tail, right, from the stem, and I'm gonna kind of use the shrimp as kind of a platform so I can plate up. I'm thinking about volume as I'm plating, right? I'm just gonna add that on there. Okay, and I think we're done. This is going to be the South African Peri-Peri shrimp with mealy pop and an apple and tomato chutney. Thank you very much.